Hello. Hello. Hello and welcome all to a very episode that is special of the Invictus stream. In fact, it is so special that it is a Justin Reed's Community Spooks edition. My name is Justin Thomas James, and I will be your host this evening as we delve into the spooky, horrifying, gruesome lives of the very community that watches. And if I had sound effects, this was where I'd put the but I don't have sound effects. So you're just going to have to deal without them. Or, better yet, imagine the sound effects in your head. Okay, picture this. It's Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. You're the only one in the house. Just you and the cat. But even the cat is off doing something else. And you hear a click as you turn on your television screen. You've got one of those old-timey tube televisions for some reason that makes a click sound when you turn it on. And somehow you're watching the Invictus stream on it. But even that noise, that sends shivers down your spine as you realize it becomes very, very clear that you are all alone in this room. And now I was going to do a sound effect. And now, as you watch me bloviate on the screen and try to come up with things to say, you hear a sound. Very subtle at first. You think that perhaps it's your cat going into her kitty litter door. But as the sound progresses, you realize more and more that this is the sound of a door opening. You can even hear the rattling metal sound of the door handle turning. Doors are creepy, man. I've been alone in my house and heard doors close. And it's not a haunted house by any means. It's just drafty. But it scares me every time. I'm a 29-year-old man and I still get scared by doors slamming. Anyways, yeah. Welcome to the Invictus stream. Welcome to another episode of Justin Reed's, the very first Community Spooks edition. And what does Community Spooks edition mean? Well, I'm going to explain in a second. First of all, don't you love that when you mix your sayings? First of all, that's a combo, a very special combo that I came up with myself just there, of first of all and first off. It's just, I got two people running the show tonight. Yeah, so first off, I just want to say that I'm the only person here tonight. As you may have noticed, Joe and Harlan, two wonderfully talented people, are not here. They are in Florida. And of course, the other wonderfully talented Rob Diabald is not in Florida. He is getting ready for Breakout Con. Breakout. So chic. RPG. Breakout Con, which is happening in Toronto. Is it this weekend? Is it next weekend? I feel like it's I think it's next weekend. Anyways, I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing tonight. So they couldn't be there, here, there. I guess it's not really here because here is like in my own space, but they're somewhere else. But it is technically here in this show. So they couldn't be here in this show, even though when I say here, I actually mean elsewhere, not actually beside me. Um, what else do we need to go over? Yeah, this is an 18 plus show. I don't know what stories you guys have written. Oh, I've already given it away. What is Community Spooks? Well, basically, instead of me reading stuff that I find online today, I'm going to be reading stories that you, the community, have submitted. And let me just say, I am super excited. I haven't actually read any of these stories. I've just seen some of the titles and they look fantastic. Oh, we've got another. Oh, we just got another submission. Okay. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I don't know if there's any 18 plus content in any of these stories. There might be. So be prepared for that. If you don't like 18 plus stuff, I mean, this is an 18 plus community. So just be prepared that you might have to turn the TV off quickly if you've got kids running around staring at the TV. But it's a spooky edition, so you might imagine that, maybe they don't want to hear about all the creaky doors and old tube televisions. Yeah. So yeah, 18 plus show, a little bit about what the show's all about tonight. Where Joe, Harlan, and Rob are tonight. Where I am tonight. I'm right here. Yeah. Faithful. Old Faithful, they call me. Oh, Justin. Oh, that Justin. He's always doing those streams. He's always at them streams. Old Faithful Justin. But you got to have faith when you work with such a wonderful community. Wow, am I really getting off track tonight or what? See, the problem is I didn't make a list and I didn't take my Ritalin. And I think that in combination, the two of them have created a kind of perfect storm of unpreparedness and distractibility. Oh, but where's Chris Vissot? Yes. Well, of course, Chris Vissot. Do you really want to know? Listen, I'm only going to tell you this because I trust you guys. Okay. And I know that you can keep a secret. All right. Chris Vissot is undercover investigating UFO sightings in Nevada. Don't ask me how I know. I logged into his email because I hacked into it and I saw a password from the X-Files agency. And they said that he needed to leave Canada and come down to the States right away because there's been a UFO sighting in Nevada. He's never been to Nevada. But somehow he doesn't even know anything about aliens. But you know what he does know? Outdoor education. He teaches it to grade 9s and 10s, I think. Might be grade 11s and 12s as well. Don't quote me on that. He knows his outdoors stuff. And they had someone who was going to be their guide in Nevada doing outdoorsy things, but okay, this is another high confidentiality piece of information, but they went missing in Nevada. So you can understand that I'm a little worried right now for Chris Viso. If you could, please send him your regards. You can make a public announcement, but don't say anything about Nevada, okay? All right? We don't want the FBI breathing down our necks, right? But if someone can start a post that just says, "Good luck, Crispy So. We knew that one day you would be serving our country, and we appreciate the heck out of you for it. Be brave, be strong, save the world. And if you want to mention aliens, you can, but keep it subtle, you know. So that's where Chris So is tonight, Nevada, looking at UFOs. What else? Hey, what are we doing here? This is a live show. You each have paid a significant amount of money to be here to watch, but you know what? I'm feeling selfish. I'm still going to ask you guys to leave a like on the video. We got 12 watching now. We got 14 likes. Come on, people. Where are those likes? Wait a second. We've got more likes than watchers? Oh my God. Oh my God. It's a miracle. All right, and we got 13 watchers now. Hey, okay, so all right, we got enough likes then. Yeah, subscribe if you enjoy this sort of thing. If you enjoy listening to the sound of my voice, I mean, who doesn't? You can follow me, Justin Thomas James. I think, yeah, I've got a YouTube channel too. Find it. And subscribe to that too. I'm not going to give you a link. You just track it down and you subscribe to that yourself if you want to follow me. All right? Okay. Uh-oh. Am I narrating right now? Oh my God. So right now I am sitting in I'm sitting in a sound booth theater live group. This is hilarious. All right. I've got to actually sign out of this. That's hilarious. I'm giving the show on a different channel as well. Bye bye. How do I switch? How do I leave? Nothing but the most professionalese here at the Invictus show stream. Here we go. Why don't we get into some reading? I see there's 12 people watching again. Oh, and 18 likes. Wow. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. Oh, and it's something spooky. 12 people watching and 18 likes. That could mean one or two things. The 12 people watching are actually not people. Or we've got 6 aliens watching from outer space. Not aliens, ghosts. Okay. All right, I'm digressing hard because that was one hell of a rambling intro. The first story to get your spooks on tonight is by a fellow by the name of Mervyn Tanner. You all know him as the man with the glove. And he wrote a spooky story for us. And I'm going to do my best to make it even spookier. So, without any further ado, and I'm sorry, guys, that was a lot of ado. Let's get to it. Oh, and by the way, one more ado. I had given it some thought as to whether or not we were going to do a battle books tonight, but I figured because it's, you know, people sharing their own submissions, I don't know. I wanted to leave out the whole competitive aspect of it. I just wanted to, I wanted to really focus on the fact that you guys spent the time to pretty much do a high school creative writing project in a week. That's awesome. So thank you guys very much for all of your submissions, and let's get spooky. The Girl by Mervyn Tanner. When I was young, a thing happened. Or maybe it was nothing. In those days, the sun shone all summer, and the days felt long as years. My family lived in a big old house that creaked inside whilst it slept, and a large, slightly overgrown yard. My little brother was yet to be born, my sister was a baby, and my older brother was okay, but rarely smiled. I spent my time happily in my own head, dreaming. I could always make my mom laugh. In the middle of the yard was an old statue, 3 feet or so tall, maybe of a girl. It was worn with time and its form indistinct, like it had melted with age. There was a definite head, but the features had disappeared. To me, especially when the trees threw shadows, it seemed its head would turn to follow me around the garden. It watched with an eyeless stare. I was not scared of the girl, not really. She felt sad, watchful more than evil. We had an understanding. I would talk to her and sometimes take books onto the lawn and read to her. Her face never changed, and she never spoke, but did, I think, listen. Some evenings, when I had been sent to bed, I would look out of my bedroom window. In the failing light, the girl would somehow grow as her shadow crept through the grass towards the house and me. At those times, I would shiver and jump into bed to pull the covers up tight. Once, with a fever, I dreamt the shadows had stretched all the way into my bedroom, and the girl had stood at the end of my bed, watching as I slept. The rest of my family paid little attention to the girl. At most, she was a small lump of stone, sometimes to be used as a post for games, but not worth a thought. After a few years, we moved to a new neighborhood, and I forgot all about the girl. I went back once to find the house was smaller than I remembered. Even the hill, which, when we rode down on our bikes, made the speed push tears from our eyes, was not the mountain of my memory. The enchanted wood in the valley was just a few trees with a picnic bench. The place was less magical, busy, and full of noise. A couple of weeks ago, it was my dad's 80th birthday. My mom died a few years ago, but the rest of the clan gathered to celebrate, admire how tall the kids had got, and talk of old times. I mentioned the girl, and everyone looked at me blankly. My mum would have remembered, I think. Looking through the photograph albums, I found 1974. I told you it was a long time ago. And there was little Marvin, with curly hair, freckles, and a big smile sitting on the lawn. However, there was no statue, no little girl, not even a place where one could have stood. What can I say? Maybe it was all in my head. That's the spookiest place I've ever been, but not somewhere I'd be scared of. Scene. Very cool. Very cool. Let's give a big round of applause to Mervyn Tanner. Very nicely done. Wow. I'm just processing my thoughts here. First of all, I definitely was reminded of Doctor Who, Sleeping Angels. Um, but I really liked that it was spooky, and there was definitely a sense of uh, Twilight Zone oddness about the whole situation. But I liked that there was a sense of um, kind of there was a love in it, like it wasn't just spook spook spook. It was there was some sort of tenderness to the story. Let's read the comments. What did you guys think? Let's hear some comments. Um, and again, this show isn't really about criticizing. If we can keep it to what we like about the stories that we're going to be reading, not that there's anything really to criticize about this. This is fantastic. Um, yeah, I'm looking up. We've got some. Oh man, yeah, that Weeping Angels episode just freaked me out. Great concept. These were supposed to be real life stories, yes? Yes. So that was the challenge for you guys to send in real life stories. If there are some stories that aren't real life, that's fine. I'll be cool with them as long as they're spooky. As long as you don't send me a biography of your cat Sprinkles, unless it's a spooky biography. What do we got? We got applause, or we got le chip beef. Le chip beef. What the chip beef? Chip beef. You know what? These glasses are bothering me because they just reflect my monitor right back at you guys. But I enjoy wearing them. And I feel like they go with my outfit. I got a very blue thing going on tonight, very blue hue. If only my name was Hugh. Yeah, Le Chip Beef says that was cool. We got applause from Colin Bro. We got Carly, triple applause. Bjorn says statues in general are a little spooky. Vanishing statues that nobody else remembers is definitely spooky. Great mood by from Abe Hughes. Colin Burkhardt says it was quite creepy. Carly says really great story, Marvin. Colin Bro, that was nice. Statues are super spook. Left you to think what happened from Adam Frey. Don't Blink is the best Who episode. I agree. That's the one that I remember the most, at least. I keep on thinking that there's going to be glare, but there isn't. And I can see just as good. Oh, no, I actually can't. All right, but that's okay. I don't really need them, They just kind of help with eye fatigue and stuff. Hey, look who it is. It's Mixmaster Audio Ahmed. How's it going, brother? Yes, your nephew watched that too. That one scared your nephew. Yeah. Is that like you don't have a nephew, but it actually scared you? Like, oh yeah, that one scared my nephew. I feel like my eyes can be so much more expressive now. All right. Moving right along. We got another story for y'all. All right. This is a solid length. A little bit longer than the last one. Okay. Let me see if I can. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. It feels like summer. Dun, 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 dun. All right. The next submission comes from someone who is no stranger to the stream. In fact, she's no stranger to writing either. Nor is she no stranger to spooks. From Brianna Agnew Weber, I bring you Brianna's experience. A month after I turned 13, I went to Italy as a student ambassador. Mostly we went around sightseeing and meeting people from other cultures, but we didn't always stay in a hotel. Sometimes we would stay with families or other interesting places. When we were in Italy, I don't remember where, but I think it was outside of Florence, we stayed in a Catholic convent. Now, this was a nice building. Either the nuns were getting a ton of donations or this play hadn't always been a nunnery. Now, for the 2 nights we would be there, I was in a room with 2 other girls. We had just gotten there and were each sitting on our own beds. The room we had was big, larger than the average studio apartment. It was a beautiful, if simple place, with hardwood floors and brass beds. What I noticed as soon as we came in was there was a balcony that looked out over the garden. The door that led to this balcony was hard wood with long curved handles. I remember touching them, but deciding not to open them because the afternoon air of Italy in July is stifling. The room we were in had neither air conditioning nor a fan, but that was okay. We were just grateful to be out of the sun, which seemed much closer to the earth than it was back home. One of the girls had locked the door with the hook and eye latch not long after we had come in. One of the boys in the room next door had burst in without knocking, and we did not want it to happen again. We were using this time to write in our journals. It was only 6 or so in the evening, and we had a while to wait until dinner. We were each sitting on our beds, talking about where we were going tomorrow, and excitedly talking about how we were going to Venice the day after that. I don't remember what made me lift my head, but I did. About half a second before the doors that led from the hallway to our room burst open. They slammed against the walls and rebounded. I remembered waiting for a gale of wind to rush past me. I could see there was no one at the door. My breath caught in my chest, and I looked at the girl on the bed next to me. I could only see her profile, but her eyes were wide. I counted 3 heartbeats before she spoke. "Get out." It wasn't a shout or a scream. It was a command. There was another few seconds. Then the doors that lead out onto the balcony burst outward. We all sat there a moment, unmoving. Then the girl who had spoken started to make whimpering sounds. I rushed to close the door to the balcony, and my other roommate rushed to close the door to the rest of the convent. When both doors were locked, we all climbed on the same bed and held each other. We were all shaking. I didn't say anything, but I remember the other roommate asking over and over again, "What the hell was that?" At dinner that night, the other 2 girls went to every other member of the program and demanded to know if they had played a trick on them. Everyone looked confused. I don't know why we didn't think to ask the nuns, but we did talk to one of the group leaders. He just shrugged and said that sometimes weird things happened in old buildings. After dinner, we went to bed. In about a year's time, I would develop quite a bad insomnia, but at the time I could fall asleep almost anywhere. That night, I laid awake. We had agreed to leave the lights on. I listened to both of the other girls tossing and turning in their sleep. The one who had yelled, "Get out," woke up in a cold sweat around 1 in the morning. She ran to the leader's room and demanded to call her brother, who she thought was in trouble. Calling from Italy to the US was complicated in 2004, so it took almost 30 minutes to get through to her mother. The mother confirmed that the brother was fine. I later learned that that night, the brother had had a near miss motorcycle accident. My other roommate woke up screaming from nightmares twice. I only slept in fits and starts until dawn. I'm one of those people who always dream, and I always remember my dreams, no matter how weird they are. I did not dream that night, or the next night when we stayed in the same convent. I wish I had gotten the name of the convent because I would love to look it up now, but I didn't. And I have not stayed in contact with anyone else who went on that trip. When I got home, I lost the journal I wrote in as well, in which I wrote about what happened. My mom was disappointed because she thought it would be a nice souvenir in years to come. I was secretly grateful. Brianna's experience. Thank you very much, Brianna. A round of applause for you, madam, for surviving such a spooky experience. My goodness. Talk about, okay, all right. We were talking about doors. We were talking about doors. Doors are creepy as hell. Very nicely done, Brianna. Um, I really enjoyed that climax really hit hard when the door burst open and then the other door burst open and "Get out." The girl who shouted "Get out" or said "Get out," it was a command. What do you think happened, Brianna? Do you have any ideas? Oh, little sidebar. Joe and Harlan wishing you all well from the airport in Tampa. Well, I wish you well as well, Harlan and Joe, though I do not know whether or not you can hear me. I do not know whether you can hear me. Yes. I don't think so. I don't think you're watching. But a hugs and kisses back to you. That's Joe, and then that's Harlan sitting at the airport. Colin Bro regarding the story says, very well done. Great scary story. Bjorn says, I would have been done at the get out part. Colin Burkhardt says, wow, this is making me think about how terrible my writing style is compared to everyone else. Um, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. You know, writing is, it takes a long time to develop. It's something that I'm not very good at myself, that I would love to be better at. But I just need to, force myself down into a chair and get used to getting my ideas from here, onto the page. Because I do have ideas, but when I think about I think about the idea, then when I think about okay, well, how would I phrase this sentence and how would I cast this scene? How would I create my style? Um, it just becomes way too daunting for me. So it's not something I have considered, or it's not something that I've put time and energy into yet. But one day I would like to, and maybe you're in the same boat, Colin. Maybe one day you'll continue to write and try different things. But right now, I'm going to continue to read some of these comments. As for that, I was getting a possession vibe from the Get Out girl. Yeah. Assuming we're going off popular culture when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely gave me that vibe as well. Like she was possessed temporarily. Um, no writing style, wrote down from the experience. Oh, yeah. We got a submission from Mike Fazio, too. That's excellent. So, um, all that matters is that you have fun while writing, and I would tend to agree with you there, Carly. Writing is a type of job that you need to love to do. I think creative writing, at least. I mean, maybe you can be whipping out blogs and articles that you're not interested in if you're in that line of work. But when it comes to writing spooky stories, especially about your own experience, for me, I feel like that's something that you need to enjoy doing in order to make it your career, because there aren't very many places that will employ many people. You've pretty much got to go the self-published route nowadays, if you're just starting from nothing, or if you're really lucky, or just really, really talented. Um, but maybe that's a topic for another day. Maybe we should have like a writing workshop. We can get share some ideas on the stream. I don't know. I don't know if that's an idea. Justin reads and writes at the same time. I don't know. That might be a little too much, but something to think about. Bjorn basically wrote down some background info and then what happened that day. Hey, listen, guys, this is a good challenge for me. This is I really, really enjoy. Um, I shouldn't frame it that way. I really enjoy reading things that people care about. We'll put it that way. And it doesn't matter if it's just like a something like quick that people just like whipped up, whatever. I'm gonna do my best to give it the same like emotional weight. Even if it doesn't have the same elegant style as the people that we've listened to already. Um, I'm gonna try to add the weight to the parts that matter, and it's fun for me to try and parse that out. So, um, Maybe that's a horrible way of framing it. I'm sorry if that sounds arrogant or condescending or anything, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to hearing your experiences. So Brianna says she is Native American. She seemed more connected to the world of the weird than anyone I've ever met. In car, it wasn't clear between one door opening and the other doors was almost 10 seconds. Um, yeah, the one door opening and the other doors was almost 10 seconds. Crazy. I have an ability to write exquisite gore horror, but nothing spooky, just the grossest things. Holy smoke. Okay, I'm not going to be able to keep up with these comments. They're coming in. This is fantastic, guys. I'm really glad that we're talking about all of this. Oh, Brianna already teaches a creative writing class. That's amazing. I would like to learn. Teach me, Brianna. Teach me. The extracts permeated the flaccid flesh and perforated the seal to my soul, says John Regan. Thank you. That was a compliment, right? All right, let's move on to the next tale of spookiness. Oh, easier for you. Oh, beautiful. Oh, let's double check, make sure that. All right, we got two call-in submissions, so I just want to make sure that I got the right one. I believe I do. Oh, this is great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm so stoked. Ah, man. All right. All right. Our next submission comes from, I believe, a newer member to the Scream. If the Scream, ooh, we should call it the Invictus Scream. That has a ring to it. They're well, newish, I believe. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But Colin Bro has been a very active member in the community since he has been here. And it is with great honor to present to you his tale, The House on the Bend. To most people, the night of July 27th, 2013 isn't one worth remembering. But for a small group of friends, and what they may or may not have witnessed that day, it shall be forever etched into their memories. The small town of Mill Creek was just that, small. Saying it had a population of 500 would be generous. Even in the town's heyday, there was never much traffic on its one main road that ran the length of the town. Once the province built the new highway that circled around past the town, there was even less. Mill Creek was home to mostly senior citizens along with the odd young couple getting in on the cheap housing looking to start a family. Because of this, outside of daylight hours, it was a peculiar sight to see anyone walking the streets. Like most Saturday nights, Heather had once again invited her close friends, Colin, Selena, and Adam, while her parents were away, as they often were. You don't need to know anything about these kids except for the fact that none of them were special in any way, each of them far from protagonist material. That night was nearly identical to every other Saturday night they were all together. They would play games, watch movies, drink, nothing exciting. But what makes this night any different is what happened next. A seemingly innocent decision would change their lives forever. At approximately 10:30 p.m. that night, Heather had suggested that they all talk and walk to the small playground just down the street a ways, no more than a kilometer down the previously mentioned main road, just past the notoriously blind bend in the road. Now, because variety is the spice of life, the suggestion was met with universal agreement, and they would head out immediately. Now, Mill Creek is very close to the ocean, so you have to understand that calling the summers there humid would be a gross understatement. Hot and damp. That's what there was to look forward to each night. Couldn't take more than a few steps without sweating through your shirt, even in the dead of night. But for reasons still unknown, that night was different. The air had an icy bite to it, something completely unheard of for that time of year in Mill Creek. However, the kids thought nothing of it. If anything, it was refreshing to have a night of relief from the unrelenting humidity. Looking back on it, it should have been the first sign that something was not quite right in the town of Mill Creek. The next hour passed without incident. The four friends made it to the park without seeing or hearing a single soul the whole trek there. Not even a light on in any of the not even a light on in any of the few houses that they passed. It remained quiet while they jumped back and forth between what few pieces of equipment that the small playground had. This wasn't out of the ordinary. Like I'd said, Heather had lived nearby, and while she wasn't really one to leave the house each night, she could hear how still the town was. Never anything more than the odd raccoon rummaging through the woods next to her house. But this wasn't an ordinary night, or at least it wouldn't become one. As it was approaching midnight, the group smartly so decided it would be best to head back to the house. While they gladly would have stayed a little longer, the cold air had begun to sink its teeth into Adam specifically. Sure, the other three wished they had maybe brought a sweater, but they were far from freezing. They say hindsight is 2020. Looking back at this moment, I can say that this was their second mistake. Walking back the same way they came, as they were nearly at the one bend in the road, it didn't take long for Selena to notice something had changed. One of the houses was being illuminated in a strange orange light from the interior. Every house had been dark before when they had passed not 90 minutes ago. Well, sure, in that time someone could have easily gotten up to turn on a light. There was no more to it than that. As they grew closer to the house seemed to come alive. It almost sounded like a party, but how? The park they were at only a moment ago was in eyesight, and not once did any of the kids see a soul eater enter the house. Oh, sorry. Soul eater. Wow, that took a quick jump. That was my mistake. The park they were at only a moment ago was in eyesight, and not once did any of the kids see a soul enter that house. Sure, it's not like any of them were focused on that house while they were at the park, but 2 dozen people, if 2 dozen people were to show up somewhere, especially at this hour, they certainly would have noticed. The sound of the party had seemingly come out of nowhere, as if someone had hit the play button on a party sounds playlist. Through the windows, you could see the silhouettes of dozens of people who, much like the sound, were not there previously. This made each of the four visibly uncomfortable, but not a word was said between them. A sort of non-verbal agreement that they must have just not noticed the beginning of this social gathering and to keep heading back to Heather's. Just as the four of them had just passed the driveway of this property, a man rushed through the front door of the house and on the front steps and began to yell. Each of them couldn't help but turn to see the man, as three more people were coming out through the same door that the man had exited. Two other men and a woman. They too were all yelling. While the kids were having a hard time understanding anything that they were saying, as each of the strangers was yelling something different, one word continued to cut through the air. They were calling out to Adam, and they were aggravated. Instantly, Adam turned to his three friends. His eyes told them everything they needed to know about this, and without skipping a beat, he was able to stutter out, I, I don't know any of these people. As the words were leaving his mouth, the side door of the property swung open to reveal another half-dozen people. To make matters worse, now the two groups of strangers were slowly approaching the end of the driveway. Much like a deer caught in headlights, the four of them stood there motionless longer than they ought to have, each of their minds racing, but their legs hadn't gotten them memo yet. Finally, as the strangers had crossed half the yard, The adrenaline had finally kicked in, and the kids took off like the wind. With their minds clouded in fear, they could come up with no better plan than to keep to the main road and hopefully outrun whatever situation they had just stumbled into. Mistake number three. It's at this point in the story that I should mention that none of them were particularly athletic. They were all able to maintain roughly the same speed as to try and stay together, except, that is, for Adam, who was noticeably behind. Looking back to the group of strangers, not only had they seemingly gathered another 4 or 5 members to the chase, they were all now running, gaining on the kids fast. It was time to kick things into high gear, but a night of eating McDonald's does not properly prepare the body for a late night sprint. It was at that moment they hear Adam scream, not in fear, but in pain. Selena, Heather, and Colin each stopped in their tracks as they turned to see the group of strangers attacking Adam. He was already on the ground. They had to do something fast. Seeing your friend in such life or death situation is a powerful thing. It instilled in each of them a courage they had never experienced, and against all logic, they ran into the fray to save their friend. There was absolutely no use trying to fight back. There were far too many of them, outnumbered nearly 4 to 1. These were impossible odds. The goal was to save their friend no matter what the cost. In an instant, the plan was a complete failure, as the strangers swarmed on the three of them from every direction, each of them being struck several times. Heads spinning, ears ringing, and the only thing to focus on now was self preservation. In moments like this, you can't defend yourself. It's worthless. You need to get out of the situation as quickly as possible, and against all odds, the next memory that they each shared was that they were somehow all pulled up and running again. Did they each get a sudden burst of Hulk strength, or did the strangers purposely ease up to let them get away? Don't know if none of us knew it in the moment. It was the latter. "Through the woods! Follow me!" shouted Heather, as she took a sharp left turn and disappeared among the trees. The other three followed without question. Heather knew these woods better than anyone. As time passed and the kids each slowed to a slow jog, with no sight or sounds of these mysterious attackers, they thought they were in the clear. While I hope you never have to experience this for yourself, take my word when I tell you that nothing cuts through the feeling of relief quite like the sound of a chainsaw. There was no time for rest, no time for hiding either. They had to get back to the house and call the police, and if they didn't, maybe none of them would ever make a call again. The mad dash through the forest was not easy. Countless cuts from branches, trips from roots, but all nothing compared to what was coming for them. The chainsaw was getting closer. It was hard to tell exactly how close it was to any of them. It's hard to tell for sure in the dark, but it was loud, deafeningly loud. It was at that moment the four of them finally broke through the trees and into Heather's backyard. And just like that, the sound stopped. Outside of the heavy breathing of four friends, the night was as quiet as it started. They couldn't help but stop for a moment of pure confusion. It wasn't long after that the police had arrived, each of the kids beaten and bloodied, but miraculously alive. After being told exactly where to go, the police wasted no time at all checking out the house down by the playground where this nightmare had begun. The house was abandoned. No signs of anyone. Nearly 2 dozen people gone without a trace. Checking the woods revealed the same conclusion. Nothing. Absolutely no signs that anything had taken place that night. To this day, no one has ever figured out what happened that night. Not the police or the children. Officially, the police stated that the kids had been drinking and must have been roughhousing, but we all know that's not true. We have the scars to prove it. So let this be a cautionary tale to never take the streets of Mill Creek at night. Not alone, not in a group, not ever. However, if you find yourself in this if you find yourself in this unlucky circumstance, stay away from the house on the bend. End. Optional disclosure from Colin. Now, while I did change the name of the town and the name of every character in the story, except for myself, this is how that night unfolded from my perspective. So it is, of course, likely missing details that may make the night seem less supernatural. Big round of applause for you, Colin. Excellently done. Wow. I got chills reading that. Holy. When the chainsaw? Holy fuck. That just totally kicked it into high gear. Jesus. Oh man. So intense. I don't know what I would do in a situation like that. What do you guys think happened? What any ideas? I mean, the part that my logical mind, the story that my logical mind wants to tell is what the police came to. That, oh, kids were drinking, oh, they were probably roughhousing, got hurt, whatever, made up some crazy story, blah 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 blah. That's what my logic wants to believe. But I trust Colin. This is his perspective. And I think that it's freaky. I think it's fucking freaky. And I don't want to consider, the possibility that something per se more supernatural was behind this strange event. Damn. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I don't know how you guys. Well, I can kind of get how you guys stopped. I wonder what would happen if you guys hadn't stopped, though. If you hadn't stopped to grab Adam. I don't want to think about it. Oh man, good job, dude. I guess that's the effect you're going for, right? 19 or 20, so not exactly a child, despite how many times I've wrote kids. Yeah, I was wondering because but I mean, you can be a kid and be drinking. Um, 19 or 20, yeah. Still, I mean, still scary whether you're a kid. That is prime uh pulp slasher movie age. It's like the universe knew you were ready for some slasher experiences. So check this. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is my brain. This is a good idea. This is a good idea. Let's just, yeah. There we go. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's what I got for you, Justin. That's why I don't get paid for this shit. Because I got a brain that does shit like that. Yes. Excellently done, Colin. Let's read some of the comments for those who may not be following along in the Discord. What do we got? Carly says, good old Maritimes. Yeah, where was this exactly? This was Mill Creek. I'm trying to remember where it said that it was in the Maritimes. Fill us in, Colin. You don't have to tell us the name of the town, but maybe the state. It was a super fun night. Sounded like it. Bravissimo. How old were you guys at the time? Yeah, 1920. Maybe you were attacked by a group. So Colin Burkhardt says, maybe they were attacked by a group of thugs and they hightailed it before the cops came. Either that or they really were attacked by a small group of angry spirits. I won't rule that out. You know what? The fact that a few people came out first and then a second group of people came out after. I feel like that um maybe the second group was cleaning up on the inside. That would be my analysis of that. They were cleaning up And they got everything done. I was thinking that they were doing something super nefarious in there, like chopping up people with a chainsaw or something. But if they were doing that, then there's no way they would have been able to clean up in that time. So I doubt it's that. Let's keep going. John Regan says things happen. Shit's weird out there in this dimension. Yep. Legit beef. I always wanted to run a one-off RPG to Dead Man's Party, and I think this short was better than anything I could come up with. Well, if it's okay with Colin Bro, um, yeah. Actually, that's a good point. So these are we're coming across some really cool concepts tonight. Um, yeah, I feel like there isn't anybody who's submitted tonight who would not be down to have their story used in a RPG that you're running privately. Um, if anybody does have an issue with it, let me know and I'll say like, okay, don't use Colin's story. Um, but how would Colin know? Anyways, yeah, it is a really cool concept. Oh my god. Let's read the convents. All right, let's read the convents, everybody. Time to read the convents. Maria Luisa Josefa del Santissimo Sacramento. They do parish work. Mother Theodore Guerin, apostolate. Nuestra Senora de Guadalupe. They also do parish work. Our Ladies of Lourdes, Provincial House of the Immaculate Conception. Saint Edith, Edith. Not too many people named Edith nowadays. Edith. It's kind of an interesting. It's very Edith. You can say it with barely moving your mouth. Edith. Hello, Edith. Edith. Yeah, you can like say it like perfectly without it even sounding muffled. Edith. Anyways, that is the section of the show where I read the convents. Hey, woo! Thank you. Edith Finch. Who's Edith Finch? I know that name. Oh, the game. Very nice. Well, I'm going to have a sip of wine. We are through submission number 3. Excellent once again, Colin. And we're moving on to submission number 4 from our very own Mike Kyle. Oh, sorry, I need to give him an intro. This next spooky submission comes from another talented author within our group. Mike Kyle has already had one of his works read on the Justin Reed's Stuff show, and tonight will be his second. From Mike Kyle, I bring you Mike's submission, because it doesn't have a title, I don't think. And it's quite short. I was hanging out with my friend one night. This guy named Dave, who used to hang out with us, went outside for something. He was gone for quite a while. He came back in, followed by a stranger. Dave said, "Hey, I saw this guy outside, and he says there's a big party. You guys want to go?" We were all bored, so we decided to go, even though something seemed really off about the guy. The first indication that something was really wrong with him came when we went out to the car. Dave threw a lit cigarette on the ground, and the guy stepped on it barefoot. He didn't even break stride or seem to notice that he'd stepped on something hot. I nudged my friend and pointed it out to him, and he just shrugged it off. We got in the car and took off. The guy gave my friend directions, and we ended up in an alley behind a garage. The house in front was dark, and there were no party noises at all. The guy disappeared into the garage. I said, "Man, something is really wrong here. If there's a party, where is everyone? Why is it so goddamn quiet?" My friend was about to answer, but then the guy came back out. He was carrying a gas can. I could tell by the sloshing sound it made that it was full. He held the can up and says, "Let's party. Let's burn this fucker down." Well, that was it for us. We all took off for the car. The guy chased us. My friend started the car, and we took off. The guy was running beside the car and pounding on the window saying, "Hey, stop! I thought you wanted to party!" We're all freaking out now and begging my friend to stomp the gas, which he did. We never saw the guy again, but we're paranoid as hell every time we went out. Oh, man. I keep reading these and forgetting that they're like, these are things that's happened to you guys. That's so ridiculous. People are ridiculous. Holy fuck. Well, first off, big round of applause for Mike Kyle. Thank you very much. Short and sweet. We definitely get the picture of what happened there. Just wanted to burn down. Just wanted to burn down a house. Man, big party. You guys want to go? Didn't in the big stride directions alley behind a garage. The house in front was dark. No party noises. Okay. Was the house like? Did people live in the house, Mike? I don't know if you're watching this right now. Actually, I don't think I've seen you commenting, so you might not be with us tonight. But if you watch this afterwards, let me know. I'm curious as to whether or not he was in the. There were people in the house, like not like partying, but if there like people lived there clearly, or if it was an abandoned house, or I feel like if it was abandoned, then you would have mentioned that. I got an abandoned vibe, but that's just my imagination. Well, I've never been to a party like that. I think the craziest thing I've burnt was a something plastic, and then like breathing the fumes of that plastic thing. Oh, I almost lit the kitchen on fire a couple times. Yeah, there was one time my dad. There was this one time. I'm gonna try to make this spooky. My dad was cooking, and he'd set something on the stove. It was a pan, maybe filled with oil. I don't know. I was just a kid at the time, maybe 6. And I was at the dining room table, which is just adjoining into the kitchen. I had a clear view of the stove, and I was coloring and drawing. When I looked up, because I saw something flickering, and I looked up, and I've got this perfect recollection of a perfect, like, Photoshop stock image, perfect fire just rising from the pan that he had put down. It was a pot or a pan. Anyways, there's this perfect fire going up, and I sit there staring at it. And I was in kindergarten or grade 1 or something at the time. So I knew what to do in case of fire. You say fire. But I was so scared that I couldn't say it loudly at all. I forgot about the loud part. So I just said, and then my dad runs into the kitchen and says, "God damn it, holy shit!" Puts the fire out. "Why didn't you say anything?" I did. I said fire. Well, you damn well didn't shout it. Something like that. Can't remember the exact words that he said. I believe that they were, God damn it, Justin, holy shit. Anyways, it's not really a spooky story at all. It's not even really a good story. It's just I saw fire once when I was a kid. So it wasn't on purpose when I lit the house on fire. Actually, I didn't light the house on fire, actually. I didn't tell. Well, I have lit the house on fire a couple times in other circumstances where I actually knew, quote unquote, how to cook. Oh no! Did I cut out? It says I'm live still. Do. Nope. Nope. I'm still live. You guys are just messing with me. Y'all are messing with me. Okay. Well, enough rambling on that fire business. Mike Kyle, congratulations for surviving that. Thank you for your spooky story submission. On to the next one. All right, we are through 5. So now that is the perfect time for it to freeze. Oh, 1 second. My father's calling me right now. Yeah? Okay, thanks. Just telling me the house is on fire. It's all good. It's all mucho bene. Molto bene. Next. Oh, yeah, that is the quiet whisper look. All right. Our next spooky story submission comes from a man who needs no introduction. The brilliant, the kind, and the well-versed in spooks, Bjorn. Bringing you Bjorn's creepy story. Back when I was around 10 years or old or so, my grandma came to live with us for a while, bringing us up to 4 people in the house: my grandma, my mom, my brother, and me. We lived in a 2-story side-by-side duplex with the upstairs having 2 bedrooms. One was my mom's, the other was shared by my brother and me, and that's where we'd usually hang out whenever we were home, and that's where the PlayStation was hooked up. However, when my grandma moved in, she got our old room, and we moved our beds downstairs to the smaller guest room. Too small, in fact, to get the TV and the game down there in addition to the beds, but we'd still use the upstairs room whenever my grandma wasn't sleeping. So I've been focusing on the bedroom situation for a while now, but you'll see why. That's where it all happened, after all. I can't remember how long she was supposed to stay with us, or for what reason she moved in with us in the first place, but she ended up staying for several months, and we adapted to the situation pretty quickly. Mom got a very convenient babysitter for her night school classes. We got another adult in the place who was a really good cook, and nothing really changed in our day-to-day activities. Even though we no longer had unlimited access to our rooms with my books and games and my little brother's toys, Grandma insisted that we just come in and grab whatever we wanted whenever we wanted. We could even play video games while she napped during the day, she said. But I felt that would have a decent chance of waking her up, and I didn't want to be rude. And so our days went on, and a routine was created. The 3 of us, sans Grandma, would get up pretty early in the morning for school and work. Later in the afternoon, we'd all get home, and Grandma would be up and cooking us something to eat. And then me and my brother would usually head upstairs for a while until it was time for Grandma's nap. Then we'd head out to play or go visit some friends. We'd come home when it started to get dark out, and then Mom would head out to her night classes while the rest of us did something indoors. The house we lived in was old. I don't know exactly how old, but old enough to where it had old fashioned lights that never really lit up everything, and it was all angles and sharp corners. Everything was wood, and over the years it had gotten bent and crooked rather, and seemingly everything was creaking. Combined with the old pipes and the banging noises that would come from them, we basically lived in a pretty cliche house. Luckily, this was back in the days before I had really gotten into the horror of any kind, so it never really bothered me. At least when it was day, or the lights were on, and there were other people around. Okay, so it bothered me a little, sometimes. Sue me. Point is that while the house might have been a little creepy at times, it was never really anything you'd stop and take notice of. It was more something you might suddenly remember when you were going to sleep in your dark bedroom, listening to the house making creaking, banging noises. So when something happened that did spook me, it was really unexpected. It was a day like any other at this point. Wake up, school, get home, eat dinner. However, a friend and I had talked earlier and decided to head over to the local football field. Now, I say field, but it was really only a somewhat flat parking area that was rarely used, with an old rusty football goal leaned up against a building. But it's what was available without traveling for an hour, so we used it. We got interrupted mid play through my friend's mom calling for him to come home. No phones at the time for us, but since he lived just a few houses away from the football field, it was still easy enough for him to make contact. So I headed back home too. I was trying to calculate how long I'd spent out there and if I had any more time to maybe get some gaming in before Grandma's nap. So when I got home, I didn't really bother going into the living room to see who was home. I just went straight up the stairs and peeked into my old room, and I was in luck. There was no Grandma to be seen. So I fired up the game and sat down, expecting my grandma to eventually make her way upstairs, at which point I'd grab a book and head downstairs again. 10 minutes passed, then 30 minutes, an hour. Eventually, 2 hours had passed, and still no sign of Grandma. I was somewhat puzzled by this, as I knew I didn't have that much time. Like I said, we'd gotten a pretty solid routine going, and deviations were rare, especially when it came to her naps. So I got up and was going to head downstairs to see if maybe we'd gotten visitors while I was upstairs or if something else had happened. But as I went through the door, I heard soft, rhythmic breathing, seemingly coming from my mother's room. Now, my first instinct was that Grandma had headed over to my mother's room for her nap instead of her own. She had been complaining about her bed not being all that great a while back, and my mom had said she could use her bed instead. But my grandma had declined the offer, deciding to tough it out instead. However, there were clearly sleeping noises coming from in there, and the few times my mom would nap, she did so on the couch downstairs. So, not really sure what was going on, I decided to open the door gently and peek inside. And sure enough, there was a shape under the covers. I could even see the top of my grandma's dark hair at the end of the bed and hear soft, rhythmic breathing noises, although a little less soft now that the door was open. Sweet. More game time for me, I figured. Back to the game I go, thinking I got a lucky break. However, as the time passed, it's as however, as the time passes, it's almost like the breathing noises get louder. Originally, I couldn't hear them at all from my old room, especially with the sound of the game on. But now they were getting faintly audible. Trying to not really think about it too much, I just figured her sleep had gotten disturbed somehow, maybe. And after a little while longer, they became inaudible again. So, back to the game my focus went. Then the noises started up again, and this time they started to unsettle me. It took me a while to realize why, however. After all, it was just my grandma sleeping in the other room. But as I was sitting on the floor in front of the TV, it dawned on me the reason for why the breathing got the hair in the back of my neck to stand up. The breathing was now coming from the bed behind me. Now, I've been called a lot of things in my life, but coward has never been one of those things, which is kind of weird, really, because it would definitely fit, especially if you could have seen me that day. I basically leapt up from sitting to standing in less than half a second and spun around to the bed. Nothing. There was nothing behind me. Even the breathing had disappeared in the momentary panic, but as I was standing there, it started up again. Not from the bed, nor even from the other room. It seemed to be coming from all sides simultaneously. Thoroughly freaked out at this point, I just wanted to head downstairs. So down I go, and with each step I take, the breathing noises get more and more quiet until they fade away when I'm down in the hallway. I ran into my mom's room. I ran into my mom, who was getting ready to leave to class, and I tell her that I think there might be something wrong with grandma, about how she's breathing really hard as she's sleeping. My mom seems confused by this, but she leaves the bathroom to go check. However, she walks into the living room for some reason. Confused and still creeped out, I follow her, about to ask why she wouldn't go upstairs. But then I see it. Grandma is on the couch, sleeping, breathing softly and quietly. I felt ice water going down my spine as I remembered that shape under the covers in my mother's room. I run back upstairs and open the door, and nothing. No shape under the covers. No hair poking out onto the pillow. In fact, the bed is made up like my mom would do every morning. No signs of use. And then from behind me, I hear hard breathing directly into my ears. It took a while before I went back upstairs alone again. Very nice, Bjorn Peterson. A round of applause for you. I hold my hands up here so that you can see that it is actually me clapping. I'm not using a fake clapper. I'm not using a laugh track or anything, or applause track, rather. Wow. First off, awesome stuff. You've got a great sense of style. Um, Also, that's creepy as fuck. Jeez. Yeah, that sounds like ghosts, man. Got ghosts in that house. Is your mom still living there, or is this, or maybe this was? Yeah, I think you said. Um, oh, you lived in a two-story side by side duplex. So I'm imagining your mom has since moved out. Oh, yeah. So while we're waiting on that response, yeah, I that definitely got me thinking about a lot of the times that it got me remembering the feeling, I should say, of being spooked by the noises that the house makes. Ooh, I gotta sorry. The noises that the house makes and weird situations, doors slamming, stuff like that. It reminds me of that feeling, especially of playing video games. Because there were some nights where like my parents would go out and sweet, I've got no reason to do anything but play video games. So just that feeling of playing video games, and it takes a lot to break you out of the immersion of Final Fantasy. And sometimes it would just happen, whether it's the wind howling outside, rocking the house, something banging upstairs when you're alone, and then you go up and find out that something has just randomly fallen over. Um, yeah, yeah, there's a certain feeling. Well, it's a spook. It's a spook, but it's a solid spook when you're playing a video game. So thank you for including video games in that. That's felt like a part of my own childhood. As to whether or not the mother lives in the house, Bjorn says, we moved out a few years after that. Still have no idea what that was. Logical me thinks it has to have been the wind somehow, but it sounded really like breathing, though. Yeah, man. Glad you moved out. Glad you moved out. Just hoping it's not like Insidious, where you move out and realize that the house isn't the problem. hmm That's what I'm hoping. Oh boy. Insidious is probably my favorite scary movie. Just throwing that out there. I love, love. Oh, and sorry for spoiler breaking, but I've already broken it. But that that twist that it's not the house, so good because it defies all horror movie tropes, or one very common one. And yeah, the thing in the bed, I have no idea about other than I just imagined it. Sometimes now I don't think this is what this is because this you'd said that it was just a regular day. You'd gotten home from school, and so you'd only been playing video games for a couple hours, right? At most. Sometimes I do find that video games can mess with your perception. I feel less connected with reality after I've been playing after a solid 4 or 5 hour binge. I say a solid 4 or 5 hour binge. I've done much longer binges. Let me tell you, I've binged out hard on video games. Um, Maybe not the most in the world, but I know that Diablo 2 really ate up a lot of my time. Oh, my headphones are crackling a little bit. I'm going to take a listen. Testing, testing, testing. Crackle, crackle, pop. Crackle, snap, pop. Yeah, that's what it sounded like, actually, but seems fine now. So we're good. Oh, you just binged Skyrim all weekend. Oh, Michael and Brianna, have a great night. Thank you very much, Brianna, for your submission. It was fantastic. Um, really awesome stuff. I would love to do this again, too. I hope you continue to keep writing little short stories like this. 2,000 words is the perfect length. So if you guys, I'm going to say this right now. If you guys want to start writing, they can be spooky stories. It can be, I'm thinking this spooky stories, fantasy, sci fi, life stories, things that have actually happened to you. I would love to get something like focused going. Maybe doing a Justin Reads once a month and giving you guys a month to come up with your content. And maybe I'll read a couple on air. Um, oh, hold on. Brianna has started submitting her most recent novel to agents again today. Well, congratulations, Brianna. That is fantastic. I um wish you the best of luck and let me know if there's any way that we can support you. Um, do you have a link to the book? Is it on Amazon yet? That's um, that's really cool. Congratulations. I hope it does well. Booty. Can I do a stream other than Wednesdays? Yes. Yes. If I were to do this, I'd probably make it on a day other than Wednesday, just so that I can keep Invictus nights open. I've got some ideas. I got some ideas rattling around up here that are mixing like when I confuse two different sayings. Check Sustain Saw Massacre. Oh boy. You guys. All right. let's move on to the next story. Yeah, it would be cool to have like a monthly stream where we like do a poll every month to decide what the topic is. Yeah. How cool would that be? I don't know. I'm getting excited thinking about this. I don't know. Then that would mean that you guys would have to write something every month up to 2,000 words, and then that would be tiring for you guys. Maybe, perhaps. But I mean, it only has to be, a few submissions. Like, you don't have to do it every month. Um, but oh, how cool would that be? Like, I'd get to read your stuff live. I wouldn't have to look and hunt down any content and figure out copyright and bullshit like that. Like, I'd just be able to write the stuff that you guys come up with. I don't know. I think that would be really cool myself. Invictus topic calendar. Yeah, I think there's something there. That we could go with something like that. One step at a time. Um, awesome. What genre is it, if you don't mind me asking? And I'm going to, while you guys answer that. Oh, I know you're leaving, actually. You said you were going to bed, so don't answer that if you don't want to. I'll ask you later. Moving right along. Oh, great. Okay, so this one has a title. As a child, there were three places that spooked me, Justin, out the most. The basement at my grandparents' house that was built in the 1940s. The long, dark hallway of my house that I'm actually in right now when it was late at night and I had to go by all of those doors that were open, dark rooms within. And the third place that I was afraid of was the forest. Forests are powerful places. I always feel like I'm not alone in forests. And that can be either a good thing or a bad thing. This next tale from Colin Burkhardt shows us an example of what can happen and who you might find yourselves around when you find yourself in a forest. Once, 5 years ago, when I was about 15, I was visiting my grandparents in Idaho. My grandparents live in an actual log cabin in the middle of the woods, but I had been there plenty of times before, so this never bothered me. However, this time would be the exception. It was August, and we were there for the annual family reunion party. The adults would mostly sit around and talk, and the little kids would play games that were set up for them. Teenagers like myself and several of my cousins who were there were too old to play games with the kids and not old enough to sit through idle chatter. So we decided to go and hike the woods. I say hike because that's what we told our parents anyway, but it was more like trying to scare each other in the dark. When we had gotten what we thought was a sufficient distance from the house, we split up and, with nothing but the fading light of the day, tried to sneak up behind and scare each other. It wasn't until the game had been going on for a while that I heard what sounded like a scream, a woman's scream. The only girl with us was Ellie, and she had been known to pull these kinds of tricks, so I didn't think much of it at the time. At this point, none of the others had managed to sneak up on me, but I hadn't surprised any of them either. While trying to stay hidden well enough that nobody else would see me, I saw that my plan had paid off. I spotted someone, barely visible in the darkness as they crossed between two trees not that far in front of me. Making my way towards them as silently as I could, I reached the area just in time to see the person shimmy their way up a tree branch by branch, up a tree branch by branch, until I lost sight of them. By this point, I was thoroughly confused and weirded out, since in all the times we had done this, none of us had attempted to climb a tree before. Not to mention the fact that the way they climbed seemed unnatural, almost like an animal meant almost like an animal would, but I was certain that the figure I saw was human. I turned on my flashlight, which I had brought with me just in case, and shined it up into the treetops. When I didn't see anything, I said, "Come on! I saw you climb up there. You can come down now." And I hoped that whoever it was would do as I asked. While I waited for a response, or for one of my cousins to reveal himself, I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder. For one thing, this was surprising, and also kind of weird since it was August and should have been rather warm out. Turning around, expecting to see one of the others, surprise turned into fear as I saw nobody behind me. I considered then that all the things I saw pointed to something possibly supernatural. As I stood there, frozen in terror, my senses returned. As I stood there, frozen in terror, my senses returned to me, and my first instinct was to start making my way back towards the house, thinking that the others would do the same. However, on my way back, I ran into everyone else, who had already gathered together and were looking for me. After confirming with them if they had seen anything anywhere near as freaky as I had, they said that they had also heard the scream from earlier, and that Ellie, being the only girl in the group, went and found the others since it wasn't her screaming. I told them what I saw, and only Jensen had also seen a figure he didn't recognize, which he watched walk behind a large bush and disappear. I looked at my watch. It said 10 p.m. Immediately, this didn't feel right, as we had gone into the woods at around 7 p.m., and we were all in agreement that there was no way we had been gone for 3 hours. It had felt like no more than an hour and a half at most. We decided it was in our best interest to start heading back, and I took the lead, since I was the only person with enough foresight to bring a flashlight. On our way back, we all could clearly hear the sounds of a fifth set of footsteps following us. There were only four of us. So instead of doing the logical thing of stopping to see if the extra footsteps did too, we all decided that it would be better to run instead. When we finally reached the clearing that the house is in, we were out of breath. Everyone was still outside, talking and having fun. As we relayed our story to the adults, most of them looked at us with confusion. My grandpa John stood up and said, "I don't know about this ghost nonsense, but what doesn't make sense is that you said you kids started heading back here at 10." Grandpa showed us his watch. "Now, how can that be if it's only 10:15?" We were shocked, but sure enough, Grandpa's watch read 10:15. Jensen, Ellie, and myself checked our own watches. All of them were frozen at exactly 10 p.m. Mathis, who was the fourth person with us, didn't have a watch, but he was the only one who had his cell phone on him. The phone's time was also stopped at 10. But the weird thing was, the date on it had changed from August 12th, 2014, to November 8th, 2007. Other than that, the phone was normal and didn't seem to have been reset. The next morning, we all went out to where we had been last night to show our families, but we found nothing out of the ordinary. I did some research on my own online to see if there was anything that might have happened there before my grandparents owned some 15 or so acres of land and their cabin is on. However, they built the cabin in the 80s with the help of my dad and uncle when they were teenagers, and before that, there was nothing out there on the land. As far as I could tell, nothing occurred that could be considered probable cause for paranormal activity. This experience that me and my cousins had that night was by all means the first and subsequently the last case of supernatural weirdness that has ever happened in the forest surrounding my grandparents' house. scene. Big round of applause for Colin Burkhart. Nicely done, my friend. And I would definitely say that you have a sense of style. It's in there. I got to it, no problem. The story read nice and fine. So good stuff. Good stuff. That good stuff. That is my brain creating, combining stuff and job into one word that is now stub. Awesome job. I just got to choose one. Can't be indecisive on the word choice. Yeah, absolutely fantastic, dude. That's creepy. Oh man. The touch on the shoulder, turning around. Oh man. Forests at night, man. Forests at night. Mm-mm. No, thank you. I have too vivid an imagination for it not to be creepy. Oh boy. The Chip Beef says that this makes him remember some creepy stuff that happened to him. Well, Chip, write it down. If you write it down, make it under 2,000 words. I'd love to read it sometime. Dope. Well, all right. Time for the next story. 1, 2. Okay, so we have 3 more stories to get through. I'm going to have another sip of wine. Ah, aliens. Okay, let's see if I can do that face. There we go. That was long enough for someone to take a screen capture. I'm really liking my lensless glasses here. I feel stylish, but at the same time, I don't reflect the glare from my computer monitor. Oh man. Something funny happened the other night that has nothing to do with spooks. But I was doing I got together with some friends and we'd had a few drinks. And I was staying over at this place up in Ontario, and it was just the 4 of us, and we didn't have any food, and we tried to order pizza, and no pizza came, so I drunkenly was like, "Oh, I'll cook." And we found some wings that were frozen. I normally don't cook frozen things because experience with food isn't as good as it could be. But I decided to make these wings, so I did the wings, put some jerk on it, and then put it on the barbecue. And I must have left it a little bit too long, just a little bit. Just a little bit too long because the meat itself was still it was great. Like the meat was fine, but it was charred. It was overcooked on the outside. So I brought them back in and like 50% of these wings were just like burnt to a crisp, it looked like. And then I don't know how it happened exactly, but we I must have I think I bit into one of them and then said, mm-mm, just like mama used to make them. And then my buddy's like, "Ooh, just like mama used to make them. I don't like the way mama makes them." And I just like, it felt like a nice break of a trope. Ooh, just like mama used to make them. What if mama can't cook? Oh, yeah, just like mama used to make them. Right in the garbage. Right in the garbage. Anyways, just thought I'd share that. There we go. The face Justin makes when he decides to cook. Yeah, I make the aliens face. Aliens would do a better job cooking. Yeah, Colin Burkhart says, you specifically remember that I didn't realize the scariness of the mysterious tree climbing figure until after the hand touched my shoulder. I don't know why, because in hindsight, it was unlikely to have been anyone in our group. Yeah, that's true too. The fucking tree climber. And you like, I'm glad that you specified that it was definitely the figure of a human because I mean it could have been a bear, which if it was a bear, that's still pretty creepy. Um yeah, just a person climbing a tree. Maybe it was a hunter. Maybe it was a poacher. And they like knew that you were onto them. And then they sent their dead poaching partner to tap you on the shoulder and distract you. Oh fuck. God. Oh fuck. It's even more creepy when you think about the footsteps going home. Was that the ghost? I don't think that was the ghost, dude. Like a ghost tapped you on the shoulder, you turn around, you walk away, you meet up with your friends, you're walking back, and you hear another set of footsteps. You didn't hear a set of footsteps when the ghost tapped you on the shoulder. So whoever was following you back, I think, was whoever was up in that fucking tree, man. Woo! Woo! uh-uh. Uh-uh. Oh no. Oh no. I will not join you on that, sir. I will not go into that dark forest with you, sir. Oh no. Uh-uh. Oh, oh. Oh, 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 oh. Spooky. That's how I should end all of the short stories. Spooky. All right. Moving right along. All right. Moving right along. There we go. The ghost could have saved your life. Whoa. Blew my mind there, LeChip. Blew my mind. All right. Why don't we do here another story now, eh? Beautiful. Okay, so this one, it looks like we've got um oh, very cool. Okay, so um our next spooky submission comes from another new joiner to the stream. At least I believe he's new, relatively speaking. And I do not know what it is about, but I do have a good feeling that it is going to be spooky. From Abe Hughes, I bring you The End of Summer, which I've just named it now, based on the first sentence. Summer was ending, and the only sense of fall's imminent arrival was an occasional crisp breeze on the occasional falling leaf. And the occasional falling leaf. The sun was still plenty hot, though, and I decided to park my rusty beige Subaru beneath the shade of a large elm. My girlfriend Danielle got out and started up towards her apartment. We were both tired from our Sunday morning hike through the park, and I groaned a bit as I got out of the car. Across the street, a woman sat behind a small, foldable card table with some trinkets laid out on top. On the ground next to her were some large items, including two orange metal car ramps. I thought about how long it had been since I had changed the oil in my car, and the words of my dad saying, "That car will be part of the 300,000 mile club." A milestone that was slowly creeping up. I approached the table and eyed the ramps. The lady smiled up at me from her seat behind the table. She was in her late 50s and had wisps of silver in her black hair. She noted my attention towards the ramps and said, $40 for the pair. The $20 in my pocket consoled me in the fact that it probably wasn't meant to be. I'll think about it," I said, and that was the extent of the words we shared together. He hated the situation he was in. He hated how she reminded him of her daughter and how he couldn't have her back. He hated the awkward necessity of the situation. He hated what his life had become. But it hadn't started out like that. He found a job up in New Hampshire, and his girlfriend said her mom lived there. It was a little weird moving in with his girlfriend's mom, but he needed a job, and he thought maybe if they got along, it would be good for the relationship. And for a while, it did work. Her mom made dinner every now and then, and while he kept things clean and was the occasional handyman. His girlfriend would come up every so often, and they'd all go out for a Mexican place that was in walking distance from the apartment building. Her mom would even let him borrow the old BMW when his car broke down. Though outside of these get togethers, they didn't talk much. There was almost a professionalism to the situation. They both knew it was an arrangement of convenience, and when it was no longer convenient, things would change, which, of course, they did. First, his girlfriend broke up with him. They were apart too often, and it just wasn't working out. But her mom still needed a roommate to help with the bills, so things stayed as they were. Then he lost his job. His heartache left him depressed and careless, the latter of which his bosses didn't appreciate and kicked him to the curb. Then it was down to money. He said he would find another job, and in the meantime, he would have unemployment, but it wasn't enough. Soon the quiet understanding they had between each other turned into occasional chides about his uselessness and his sullen demeanor. Then, finally, when he couldn't make rent for the second or third time, the tension which had been bubbling below the surface broke. All the words that they had kept to themselves were hurled at each other like stones. She fiercely whittled away at what was left of his fragile ego, and he attacked with anything he thought could hurt her. He had never been that angry before. It was freeing, in a way. The rain pattered on the wood. No. Rain pattered on the roof and dripped down the windows. The dull gray light of the morning leaked into the room as the television whispered quietly. I was falling in and out of consciousness in the warmth of the bed. Danielle was sitting up reading a book with the covers over her legs, as if remembering something. She closed the cover, set the book down, and looked over at me. Hey, do you remember that lady that used to have yard sales across the street? I sleepy I sleepily thought about the lady with wisps of silver in her hair. Yeah, I think so, I replied. No one has seen her in a couple of weeks, and I guess some of the neighbors have seen her roommate driving around in her car. Danny always loved a good mystery. She's probably out visiting someone, like a family member or something, I said dismissively and half asleep. Maybe, she said. I rolled over and looked out the window at the apartment building across the street. It was a small, white, two-story building with an open balcony on the second floor. The small lawn in the front, where she had sat weeks before, was vacant. The windows of the apartment where she used to live were dark and revealed no secrets. He never knew he could be so many things at once. He was tired, angry, scared, hungry, and so lonely. The stress of everything never abated and ate at him every single second. His stomach howled with pain, and he couldn't eat. He couldn't get his brain to turn off, nor could he dull the noise of his thoughts with drugs. Even all these days later, he swore he could still smell the paint and plaster he used. Everything was turned up to the point of distortion, and he wasn't sure he could take it anymore. Things didn't get better when he left. He knew the neighbors were looking at him more and more. The excuse that she was on vacation could only last maybe a week at most, and if her daughter started calling around, then maybe he would only have a few days. How much time did he have? The money he stole paid for a couple days at the motel, then he would have to go somewhere else. His best bet was Canada, but that would mean driving back through New Hampshire, where he knew they would be looking for him. He was a fugitive? This new part of his identity was so hard to reconcile. He knew some smaller criminals and had some brushes with the law himself, but this was the kind of thing that happened on television, where he could laugh at their foolishness and find glee at them getting caught. But there wasn't anything funny about his situation. He was in the wrong. He was on the wrong reality, and all he wanted to do was get back to the right one. The dark motel room was a temporary womb where he could hide from everything, and as long as he didn't leave. He had been there for a few days, waiting to come to a decision on what to do next, or for someone to find him. He stayed up all night watching out the window, shivering every time a police car went by. It took days for him to finally sleep. He dreamt that he was back with his girlfriend and they were having dinner at the Mexican place down the street. Everything was pleasant and they were talking about the future. Maybe they would move in together. Maybe he'd get a better job back near her and things would be happy. The idea of these impossibilities snapped some of the lucidity into the dreams, and he knew in that nightmare logic what would happen next. The more he tried to fight it, the more he knew he would lose grip on his happy dream. "Where is my mother?" was all she had to say. He woke up in the motel room. Bright light cut through the cheap blinds, and he was fully in a sober reality of his life. It didn't take long for him to make a choice laying there, the only one that made sense to him. It wouldn't be justice, but it was something that had to be done. He picked up the phone and called her. I opened the window to let the smoke out, hoping she wouldn't notice. Some grease had dripped off of the baking sheet and burned on the elements of the stove. Danny might get stressed out by how I worked in the cramped kitchen with the old oven and the non-existent counter space, but she loved my chicken cordon bleu, or at least pretended to. Cold air spilled out of the open window as I looked out on the neighbors' houses. Orange lights and spiderwebs adorned porches and windows up and down the street. The soft lights of television screens illuminated rooms of strangers gathering around to watch ghosts safely in their home. Suddenly, Danny called out to me from the living room, and my instinct was to calm her down. "It's okay, just a little bit of smoke, that's all." I grabbed a towel and started trying to fan the smoke out of the window. "No, it's not that." She got up, walked into the kitchen, and handed me her phone. "Look at this." From Newsweek.com. Murder-suicide suspected after missing New Hampshire woman's body found. By Reuters on 10/12/15, October 12th, 2015, at 4:49 p.m. New Hampshire authorities said on Monday that a body found stuffed behind a false wall in an apartment closet in Manchester is likely that of a woman who had been missing since last month. Police in the state's largest city discovered the body of a woman believed to be Sue Hutchison, 57, after family members reported a foul stench in the building where she lived. Hutchison and her roommate, Stephen Andrade, 36, went missing around September 20th. Last week, Andrade was found dead in a Massachusetts motel room, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, police said. Police have said Andrade had been dating Hutchison's daughter, had broken it off, but that he and the mother had remained roommates. Police believe that Andrade had been driving Hutchison's 2005 BMW, which was found last week in a neighboring New Hampshire town. Another vehicle belonging to Hutchison was found near her Manchester home shortly after their disappearance. The New Hampshire Attorney General's office said on Monday that it appeared like Andrade had killed Hutchison. Based on statements Andrade made shortly before he killed himself, it appears likely that he killed Sue Hutchison, concealed her body, fled, and then eventually killed himself, the Attorney General's office said in the statement. They released no motive for the alleged killing. An autopsy is to be performed on her body on Tuesday to conclusively determine her identity and the cause of death. Police discovered the body on Sunday evening after searching the building where Hutchison and Andrade lived. The body was found in a crawl space behind a false wall in the closet. Wow. That's not a fictional piece, people. I will read the it's not really a disclaimer at the top, but just the information at the top. It probably doesn't need to be said, but yes, there are liberties taken with the narrative. The first person sections are from my point of view, and the third person are completely conjecture. The article I've included is real, and I've included the link. Wow. Very nicely done, Abe. Incredible. I really liked the added narrative. I thought that was a nice touch, and it definitely it made the ending. It made everything kind of tie together a lot more than just if you'd given your perspective. I met this woman, and then there was an article, and she died. Like it really um, brought home that spook. So awesome job, awesome style. Um, I think that that is insane. You met that lady. Oh man. Wow. It's tragic. It's tragic that that happened. Um, your depiction of the killer was interesting as well. It was I liked how the narrator could like uh, sympathize almost. I mean, I think that's what adds to the spookiness of it, that you can kind of sympathize like with the struggle, and then you see the article afterwards. Brilliant. I'm so glad that I didn't read these beforehand. Holy moly. Holy moly. You got a holy moly out of me. Wow. Are you still here, Abe? Are you still around to comment on this in the chat? That's that's absolutely nuts. Wow. I just took a look at the video we got. Oh, I just knocked my bowl as well. Um 12 people watching and 25 likes. Ooh. Got more than double. 13 people watching and 25 likes. Okay, not more than double anymore. But yeah, still here. Awesome job, Abe. And what was that like? Like, did you like I don't know. What do I want to know? How did you feel? How did you feel after that? Were you horrified? Like rightfully so? Like what was your reaction? It also yeah, October 12th, 2015. It happened around Halloween. Mm, wow. You didn't know her well. It was just the one interaction. Yeah. The thing that got you was that she was behind a false wall. Yeah, that's creepy too. I'm just like I'm going over this. I'm reading it. I'm refilling in details. Um, so this was the woman who lived across the street from you, and but it doesn't say there wasn't a motive. They didn't figure out a motive. Um, I'd be curious to read if there was any more info on this, but I don't know. It's kind of like stuff like this. Like I'd be curious to know what happened, but also I kind of don't want to know. Like I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I'm superstitious, but I don't know. It's just like, why do I need to know the reasons behind his actions? Why do I need to know what happened? So Abe says, that's also why you added the narrative, or that was also why I added the narrative. Never met him or and felt it needed that, so it was the full story. Yeah, so that it was a full story. Yeah, it definitely connected. Excellent job. We have a couple more to get through. My focus is dwindling. Um, but I'm definitely going to get through the last two that we've got. Um, okay. So we're going to do a little bit of a jump. We've got um, two more left. And I know that one of them is a little bit longer. So I'm going to save that one for after this one. This one's a bit shorter. All right. The next submission comes from one of the very first members of the Invictus stream, a cool bass player. I think he's a bass player. I picture him as a bass player. And teacher. The next story is called Oma by Mike Fazio. In German, Oma means grandmother. I lived in a house on a very quiet block. My Oma took care of me ever since I was little because she was retired and my parents were working. She took me everywhere and was like a second mother to me. Our house was a maze, especially to a child. My parents, myself, and my Oma all lived upstairs. My room was in the far corner of the house. Upon seeing my room, my parents' room was down the hall. To the right was my Oma's room. She always had her door closed at night. Until one night, I will never forget that night. I was 6. I was told the previous day that my Oma was away on vacation for the weekend. I slept fine until I woke because nature called. It was very early, around 4 a.m. I stumbled out of my bed and went out of my room and into the hallway. I did not turn on the lights. I tiptoed down the hallway so I would not wake my parents. As I turned right, facing my Oma's room, the door was open, and I saw a dark outline. I quickly hid behind a wall. I didn't know if my eyes were playing tricks on me or not, so I peeked again and saw an outline of a woman sitting in my Oma's favorite chair. I remember my heart beating out of my chest. I immediately ran into my parents' room. I ran to my room and I ran to my mom and whispered, "There's someone in Oma's room." She knew that Oma had left and said for me to go back to sleep. I insisted that she get out of bed and look. My mom got up and walked around the bed towards the hall. Once she got into the hall, she froze. She saw exactly what I was seeing, an outline of a woman sitting in my Oma's chair. Hello? She uttered. No response. She slowly walked to Oma's room and went to turn on the light. The outline disappeared. There was an empty room. We both know what we had seen. We didn't sleep. We didn't speak about it. That should have been the end of it, but years later, my mom told me that Oma had passed away the night before we saw the outline. Whoa. Very nice, Mike Fazio. I got chills. I got chills there, especially at the end. Um, very nice. Spook. The spook climax for me was right when the mom saw it. When the mom saw the outline as well as that Oma had passed away the night before. All right. So I don't know, guys. I don't know. It's so easy not to believe in ghosts, but stuff like that happens, and I believe in ghosts. My cousin's grandma, so not like through blood to me, um, passed away. She passed away a few years ago. A few years ago. It's like 8 years ago. Now that I think of it. Um, and I was at university at the time. I wasn't very close with her. I barely knew her. I just know that I knew that she was in the hospital, and I had a dream one night, just randomly in university, about her. And I remember waking up from the dream thinking like, "Oh no, oh no." But I didn't do anything about it at like 3 in the morning when I woke up. So the next morning, I called my cousin, was like, "Hey, just wanted to see how Nana was doing." And sure enough, he said she passed away last night. The the amount of coincidence, the amount of coincidence, the yeah, I guess the amount that would require. It's not like I don't know. I don't know if I can just write it off to being a coincidence because it's like that's not. I've never dreamt about her ever again or before that. That was the one time in my life that I can remember dreaming about her. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Before we get to our last story, what do you guys think? Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in spooks, magic? Spook. What was it? Spooked. Something like that. Do you believe in magic? Mm, mm, mm. All right. Dreams shape reality. Says Le Chibith. Le Chibith. Oh, by the way, we have a new joiner tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Welcome to Nomer, um, who I believe is Louise Adams. Louise. I say there was someone over in the YouTube chat, so I'm wondering if you came over to hang. But either way, welcome. I welcome you. Bing. Well, it would be pretty great if ghosts were real, at least. Why would it be great, Bjorn? Please tell me. What what would be great about it in your opinion? What would be great about it? Nomer says, that reminds me about an episode on Fringe where it's pseudoscience. The emotions of those still alive creates an imprint slash memory of those that have passed, imprinted into physical reality. What? Okay. Okay. The emotions of those still alive creates an imprint slash memory of those that have passed, imprinted into physical reality. Right. So I had imprinted her. I'd imprinted. The story. So Mike had imprinted her. No, no, I don't know if it's the grammar. I think it's just that my my brain is mush right now. It's been doing this all night. It's tired from all of the crazy, cool, inventive wordplay. Um, okay, so if I'm getting this right, Nomer, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that there's an episode of Fringe where the idea is it's this is all kind of pseudoscience that the emotions of those still alive, we're creating an imprint of the person who's passed away. So like um we see them, we see their figure in here, but it's not actually out in the real world somehow. It's a psychological phenomena. And then somehow um so that would be like what the episode of Fringe was about. I think that what makes this story so freaky is um that they both see it. So if that episode of Fringe is correct, then these two people, Mike and his mother, would have had to share some sort of connection that they both saw it. And maybe it did. Maybe it unlocked the imprint that his mother had as well. And then she was able to see it as well. Because obviously she would have the imprint of it. Um, but there's something about the timing of her passing away the night before is just so, even if it is a psychological thing, like I could understand, like, maybe a week later, like you've been mourning over your grandma and then you see them there and then you flip on the lights and they're not there. Maybe if it was like after a week, but it was the night before. I don't know, Fringe. You have yet to convince me, TV show. What do you think, Nomer? What is your take? Do you believe that it is pseudoscience? Or do you believe that ghosts are real? Ghosts. All right, I'm going to queue up the next one. Here we go. Okay. So you don't know. Nomer doesn't know, but that's not a hard no. You are open to the idea that ghosts exist. Huh? So am I. This next spooky submission comes from a very dear friend of the stream, Aisha Lyle, who has put together a story called The Haunting. A Haunting, rather. Trademark. I grew up in a haunted house. I can't recall everything with clarity. I truly suppressed a lot of things that hadn't come to my memory in over a decade. My parents never experienced any of the phenomena that my brother and myself did. Well, that's not entirely true. My mother experienced some things in the house and was always willing to believe my brother and I when we came to her. She herself had more than one encounter with the paranormal growing up. I will relay the few things that I can remember. For example, in my bedroom I had a sliding closet door that had a gap in the lowest corner where it wouldn't meet the wall. It was from this gap that I could often hear two women whispering to each other. I often dismissed the sound as I could never make out what they said. If you got closer to the sound, the further it would become, until there was no sound at all. I finally had my mom come in to see if she could hear the sound. We sat in silence until finally the murmurs began. My mom cocked her head and leaned closer. Satisfied that I wasn't hearing things, I asked my mom what she thought it was. She said, "I don't know, but you know your Aunt Debbie's house? Jason's room?" I said, "Yes." "Well, that used to be your grandma's room when we were growing up, and she would always hear a priest saying the Lord's Prayer at the foot of her bed. You couldn't hear it any other place except in that one spot." Learning that information did not alleviate any fears I had, only made it worse to know that it happened with some frequency and in different forms. Another small occurrence that I can remember is the smell of rotten meat when you first came into the house. I always imagined the walls being insulated with decaying meat instead of insulation because the smell was so horrendous. That was the image that it brought to mind. Of course, my father didn't smell it and would get angry with my protests of the house reeking. My mother would quietly tell me that she could smell it too, but didn't want to anger my dad any further over the issue. With the smell came the flies, hundreds of flies. They would hang around the door by the dozens, but inside was worse. I remember strips of fly paper hanging down all over the kitchen to try and catch them all. If you've ever seen the movie Seven, where they enter the room of the drug addict and car air fresheners are hanging all over the ceiling, that's what the fly paper in our house reminded me of, thinking back on it. Of course, not to that degree, but in my mind, I can still see dozens of fly traps hanging everywhere. "It seems like you kill one and 10 more appear," exclaimed my mother once. My dad, of course, blamed us for coming in and out of the house too often, bringing in the flies. However, my aunt and grandparents that lived in sequence from us had no flies to speak of their properties. At night, I would often see shadows from the corner of my eye peeking into my room. Sometimes, many, sometimes only one. They reminded me of Muppets and how they would jerk and move in and out of my vision. To this day, I don't like anyone peering around the corner at me. My husband once innocently peeked his head around a corner to ask me something. I gasped and got sick to my stomach. Bedtime was also when I would often have the blankets pulled off of me. My mom would come in mornings and cover me back up, laughing that I slept so rough I had pulled my blankets off. I believed this as well for a time. I would wake up in the middle of the night, freezing, and go retrieve my blankets. One night, however, I lay in bed and felt my blankets drifting off me. Half asleep, I pulled them back up. Again, they slipped. I pulled them up again. A moment later, they moved. This time I pulled and tugged at the sheets and blankets, trying to figure out what was snagging my bedding and pulling it off me. Finding nothing, I pulled them up to my chin and had a death grip on the coverings. Determined not to have them fall off again, I felt a slight tug this time, however. Surely not. That would be impossible. I gripped harder and pulled the sheets closer to my face. This time I felt a definitive pull on the blankets from the bottom of my bed. I gripped my hands tighter now, but this time out of fear. A final pull, and the sheets ripped from my small hands, pulling blanket and all over my end of the bed. My eyes didn't dare move from the end of the bed as I stared in fear. I did so until no longer stayed awake. I curled myself at the head of my bed into the smallest ball I could manage, not wanting any part of me near the edges of the mattress, especially not the foot of the bed, for fear of what lay beyond. The last experience I remember in my room at night was the feeling of something pushing from underneath the bed. I, of course, had an old wooden box spring topped with a spring mattress. It was the springs that I remember pushing upwards into my back as if something lay between the mattress and the box spring. Having had one too many frightening nights at this point, I became angry and remember punching my small fists into the mattress, declaring that I wasn't afraid. I may have even rebuked whatever it was that was haunting me. Whether or not this attempt worked, I cannot remember. In the daytime, there would often be the voice of my mother calling to my brother and I, yet she wouldn't be in the house, or having your name whispered to you as you played in your room. There was also a cold spot at the end of the hallway. This, however, was met with enthusiasm, as we lived in the southwest with only a swamp cooler to cool down the house. We would often walk in the cold spot just to get a spot of relief from the summer heat. The spot was as cold as walking into a freezer, and it moved. You could feel it on your face, and then it would drift away down the hall, or move down closer to the ground. We chalked it up to being some type of scientific explanation of airflow, and enjoyed the moment of reprieve from the summer heat as we passed through it. There must have been good spirits, too, in the house. I say this because I can recall my brother always wanting to go with my parents when we found out they were leaving the house, even for the most mundane of tasks. We lived about 15 minutes out of town and had neighbors sparsely down the desert street. So, when my parents left the house, you were kind of alone from human contact in a sense. My brother was scared to be in the house without them, but I didn't mind. I can recall thinking that the house felt full even when no one was home, so I never really felt alone. And I'm a very solitary person, so I didn't mind being alone in general. This fullness in the house is why I think there must have been good spirits in the house, as I didn't feel alarmed by their presence. I can recall times, though, when I felt the house go empty and silent. The sound of true silence is deafening. It was at these times that I would retreat to my room and wait for someone to come home, because it felt like something evil had come into the house. One time I was home alone in my room. I heard the familiar ring as silence fell over the house. I waited, listening. Suddenly, I heard the front door open and shut. A few heavy footfalls. "Dad?" I called out. No answer. I was more afraid of an intruder than a ghost, so I shut my door and locked it. I heard heavy boots coming down the hallway to stop at my door. I waited. Working up the nerve, I lowered myself to the ground to peer under the gap of my door, fearful I would see boots, or even worse, a face staring back at me. I dared to look. Nothing. I laid there on the floor watching on until my family came back home. That was the time I stayed by myself in the house for many years. Oh, that was the last time I stayed by myself in the house for many years. The last experience that I can remember happening in my youth was the appearance of a giant black spider. I was a tween at this point, home alone, watching TV. I saw something dart out from under my bed. I looked down, startled, and saw the biggest, blackest spider I had ever seen. It was the size of a man's hand, with thick legs and the deepest, blackest shade of black I have ever seen. I have honestly never seen a black like that before, or since. I jumped up and watched it scurry out of my door, to the right of the hallway, where the washer and dryer sat. I have arachnophobia, and was cursing being home alone with this thing, as now I had to find where it went. I couldn't very well sleep knowing that monstrous thing was in the house. Pulling the chair from my desk, I threw it in the hall and stood on it quickly. I looked around the walls, then began shaking the washer and dryer, trying to scare it out of hiding. Nothing. The doors to the other rooms were closed, so it couldn't have gone far, as big as it was. Thankfully, my family came home. I explained what I saw, and my dad went hunting with a flashlight. They found nothing, and it was played off for a laugh. They said I over exaggerated the size of it, and it was probably long gone. I could almost swear it off myself if it wasn't. I could almost swear it off myself if it wasn't for the color of it. I've seen a shade of black that doesn't exist. The events at my parents' house ebbed and flowed to become almost non existent as we grew up, many things falling from memory. I've learned that when dealing with the paranormal, your mind shuts down almost. I don't I don't know if it's flight or fight response or something spiritual. Almost like your mind telling you that you're experiencing something that is not meant for us to see, and it pulls the curtain back over that encounter so that you can go on with life unburdened. Many of these stories I had forgotten until listening to other people's tales. As much as I never want to experience another paranormal event in my life, I still listen and read about such things. I'm not satisfied with the answers I've given myself as to why it all happened, why it continues to happen to others in many forms. My brother has all but forgotten most of the events growing up. My father insists none of it ever happened. But my mother believes, even though she too has forgotten most of it along with time. I believe that whatever was in the house had moved onto the property. As in my teens and early adult years, I didn't like being outside after dark. One time, I sat outside with my nephew playing make believe games like the floor is lava or pretending there was bugs everywhere that needed to be squashed. We played for hours as the sun set. While the temperature was nice, it was also nice for potential snakes to come out. I picked up. Oh, it was also nice for potential snakes to come out. I picked up my nephew and headed inside to play some more. Who's that? My nephew asked. Who's who? I asked with a smile, wondering where the next phase of make believe was going. That man, he said. I froze, looking around. You see a man? I asked. Uh huh. He nodded. Where is he? You sure it's not Papa? No, up there, he said, pointing up the tree. I looked up, hesitant, hoping to God I didn't see a man perched in the tree. There was nothing. Can you see him now? I asked, looking up. Uh huh. Can you point to where he is? Yeah, he's way up there in the tree. How did he get up there? I don't know, buddy. Let's go inside, I said. What's he doing up there? I don't know. I said, moving towards the front door. Can you still see him? No, he's gone now. That was the last time we played outside near dark. I'm in my mid 30s now and believe that the presence has moved further away off the property to surrounding lands. I can stand to be outside when visiting my folks now, but looking past their fence line into the dark unnerves me. One night, while visiting my parents, we took in a late movie. There's a large cattle fence blocking the driveway to my parents that you have to get out and move when coming or going. My husband's knee had been bothering him, so I parked the car and raced out to get the gate before he could move. I opened the gate and moved to sit in the car when I heard a woman whisper, Hey! I stopped. I stopped and turned to look across the street into the darkness. The only thing that could see is the large boulder that sat at the entrance to the neighbor's property. My parents are one of the only people on their country road that have a light pole illuminating their land. What is it? My husband asks. I thought I heard something. I say as I turn back to the darkness. I listen. At the time, I didn't realize it, but there was a distinct absence of sound. The same lack of sound that hurts your ears to hear it. Hearing nothing further and certain that I just misheard something, I turned back to my seat. I turned back to sit down in the driver's seat. Psst! I turned back. Did you hear that? I whispered to my husband. I don't hear anything. I look once more into the pitch black dark. I remember that teens often come out here to party and think that perhaps they were too stupid to realize that they were on a residential land and are hiding behind the boulder, drunk or high. I'm not having any of it. So I shut the door and pull the car up to the house. I get out fast so my husband doesn't try to walk down back to the gate with a bum knee. I get to the gate, keeping an eye across the street for trouble. Locking the gate, I turn to see my husband standing on the porch, rigid, with his fists clenched. I look behind me to see if he sees something I don't. There's nothing, so I think maybe his ego is bruised at his wife doing mundane things in his place. But he's not that type of person, and is very slow to anger. I get up to him and stroke his arm. Hey, you okay? I ask. He stares past me back towards the gate. Are you mad I shut the gate for you? I ask. He looks at me wide-eyed. You can't hear that? Hear what? I say, leaning my head towards the night to listen more closely. He looks at me with an eyebrow raised. You didn't hear that just now. No, what is it? He shakes his head. I don't know. Let's get in the house. Are you still hearing it? Yeah, let's get in the house. He didn't speak to me the rest of the night about it. In the morning, when going over the story, he still couldn't describe the sound, other than a mixture of sounds that was loud, really loud, and unnatural. My mother walks in on the conversation and we relay the night's events. I stop mid-recollection, remembering how dark everything was. This struck me as odd, because a mile behind the neighbors' land is a huge fracking company that's lit up like a football stadium every night. I didn't see it that night. There was nothing but darkness. My mom shakes her head, her eyes wide as we tell her what we experienced. Well, I believe it, she says, looking around to see if my dad is present. I won't tell him about it, she says, meaning my father. I was out one night and I heard a baby crying past the fence. So I stopped and listened because I'm thinking surely no woman is out there walking in that desert brush with a baby. So I move to the sound and it starts moving in another direction. So I move toward the sound and it moves again. Finally, it moved to the other side of the property and I said, nope, and came back inside. I looked at my husband, my mouth agape. Yeah, I told you, he said. I don't like going outside here. Screw that. That was the last major paranormal event I've had. There have been small things here and there. I bless my house regularly, or during times when I feel the mood in the house is heavy, if that can make any sense. I even go so far as to walk the property line, blessing it in Jesus' name. I don't want to experience any more paranormal activity as long as I live. I still go cold when I see a door closed and wonder, did I shut that door? Ooh. Very nice, Aisha. Very, very well done. There was one part at the beginning that I was chuckling to myself. I'm trying to remember why I was doing that. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a whole heaping spoonful of nope. No, thank you. Very nicely done, Aisha. That was excellent. Um, I like how everything was broken into kind of little short stories, a bunch of little short stories there. Um, yeah, I got a number of spooks and chills through that. The part that I was chuckling at was when you were talking about the good spirits in the house and how there were like cool spots in the house, and you would like you and your brother would like chase the cool spots on like the warm sunny day. I've got this image of like if it is like a ghost or a spirit that's like just like trying to like just chill, pardon the pun, and you guys keep on walking into it. It's like, oh god, goodness gracious, stay away from me. And he's played by John Cleese. Nearly Headless Nick is in your house. Ooh, doppelganger story. Depends on how long it is. Oh, let's see. So you send that. Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. I must have just jumped over your. Oh, you know what I did? I read um your second submission. I assumed that they were the same submission, but you just done some editing. But no, this is a different submission. Well, let's do it. You guys want one more story? Hmm. Ooh, ah, ah, ah. Mm, nice. One more story before you get curled up in your bed and turn off the lights so that the room is in complete darkness. Uh, One more for you. One more. Oh, I think you do want a little more. You want a little more story, don't you? Oh, just a little more. Oh, I don't know about another story. Oh, Emily, I think you want just a little more story, right? Just a little more story. Oh, you can always do with a little more story, right? Oh, yes. Oh, a little bit more. Little more story. More story. All right, let's do this. One more story from Aisha Lyle. This next submission, once again, coming from the very talented Aisha Lyle, brings up a concept that we've all experienced: running into somebody who looks just like us. For me, it's Isaiah Mustafa, the Old Spice guy from the early 2010s. But for others, it might be Donald Trump, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Maybe you don't look like a celebrity, or your doppelganger doesn't look like a celebrity. Maybe their doppelganger is just someone that they run into on the street. Or maybe there's someone entirely different. This is The Doppelganger by Aisha Lyle. I've heard stories of people seeing someone that they know being in one place and then later appearing in another. These are usually one off occurrences that are remembered with fear, and rightfully so. It is unnatural to see such a thing, pardon me, and to try to comprehend it. What if that strange impersonator was your mother? And what if you grew up with it? My brother and I were very young when we first started to see my mother's doppelganger. I think we experienced the phenomenon for so long because we weren't afraid of it initially. For the longest time, we didn't even know we were seeing a double. It wasn't unusual to see our mother walking into a room only to follow her mere seconds later, and she be absent from said room. As a small child, you have no concept of time, so many of these odd occurrences were reasoned away as I must have been playing longer than I expected, and mom already slipped away. My mother was also a bit of a trickster growing up. If the opportunity arose to pull a silly prank or even scare you from the shadows with a gotcha, she would. Many times, when following her double, she would disappear around a corner. This was reasoned as Mom is hiding to try and scare us. So we would leave the room altogether, not going to let her have the satisfaction of the prank. Later, we would try to scare our actual mom in retaliation. She would, of course, be bewildered and protest that she had not been where we claimed we had seen her, nor was she trying to spook us. I experienced her double on a different level than my brother. My bedroom was the last room at the end of the hallway. Outside my bedroom and to the left was a bathroom that had a nightlight on all the time. Many times I would see the black silhouette of my mother silently walking down the hall, stopping to stand in my doorway, watching me. I would often think it was because my mom had caught me staying up past my bedtime and she was going to stand there to make sure I went to sleep. I would lay there with my eyes half open until the shadow walked silently back down the hall. Moments later, I would hear the creaks and groans of the hallway floor as my real mother would come into view of the nightlight. This time, not engulfed in darkness. Again, as a child, I reasoned what I saw. However, I didn't understand how my mother could avoid the light of the nightlight the first time she came down the hallway, nor how the double could move so silently to and fro when my actual mom would make slow and awkward steps, trying not to make too much noise as she made her way to the bathroom. One of the last times I remember seeing the double at night, it walked into my bed, or walked to my bed, leaned down with an unnatural wide smile, and stared at me. I can't recall my reaction, only remembering a similar story that my aunt told me once. As a child, she awoke one night to my mom wearing a red bandana on her head and leaning into my aunt's face with a smile all too wide. My aunt screamed, raced out of the bedroom to find my mom sleeping, and slapped her for scaring her. Hearing this story growing up was hilarious and chilling at the same time. Now faced with the same encounter, I did not find it funny. Again, I don't recall my reaction. I only remember being torn between the thoughts of if it was my mom, then my mom was a terrible person for scaring her child like that. Yet, if it wasn't my mom, well, I didn't want to think about that. As we got older, our justifications for seeing her double could not stand. One time I recall seeing her walking down the hallway. Convinced that it was once and for all Mom pranking us, I followed behind her immediately. As we went down the hall through the kitchen, my pace increased to almost a jog, while my mother's gait, to the eye, never went beyond a walking pace. While this was bizarre, I still followed only steps behind. I watched her descend 2 steps into my parents' bedroom and turn to the right behind the bedroom door. I smiled. Behind the bedroom door was nowhere to go, so I knew I had caught her this time. I waited with anticipation for her to jump out at any moment, wanting to get the upper hand. I quietly crept to the door until I could jump out with a boo, swinging the door back. There was nothing. I had seen her walk behind that door. I hadn't let my gaze drift from the spot, so there was no way she could have slipped away. With a chill running up my spine, I left the room immediately to find my actual mother. When I found her, I explained what had happened. She was creeped out, but at the time, we didn't think of it being paranormal. That was reserved for ghost stories and unexplained sounds. We had never heard of seeing a double of someone. Now sufficiently creeped out, my brother and I were relieved to know that we were not crazy. One thing to keep in mind during all of this was that we never saw its face. It was always a profile view with the face masked by hair, or we would see it from behind. Many times, after learning that we were dealing with someone otherworldly or something otherworldly, if my brother and I saw our mother but couldn't see her face, we would call out, "Mom?" If she turned around, we were safe. If she responded, as if she didn't hear us, we would just shut our bedroom door and not come out until we heard another living person in the house. One time I forgot to do so. It was standing in the kitchen with a red shirt on. I proceeded down the hallway asking it a question. As it walked into my parents' bedroom, oh, I proceeded down the hallway asking it a question as it walked into my parents' bedroom. Thinking she hadn't heard me, I followed it into the bedroom, its back towards me. I asked my question again and received no response. Mom? I asked. No response. Chills went up my arms as I realized that I was not with my mom. I ran outside and into the grass where my actual mother was standing in a green shirt watering the grass. Have you had that shirt on this whole time? I asked. The answer really didn't matter. I just didn't want it to be true. I just didn't want it to be true that I had been standing alone in a room with that thing. My father, during all those years, was either dismissal of our accounts or suggesting my brother and I harbored some secret sin that was bringing this phenomenon onto ourselves. He was, and still is, a very strict and devout preacher. He would have to question he would have to question his judgments toward us the day he experienced the double for himself. My mother and he had gotten into an argument that day. Not speaking to one another for several hours, my father decided to end the feud and approached her as she washed the dishes. He talked to my mother at length as she continued her duties around the kitchen with cold indifference to what he had to say. Angry, he stormed out of the room, only to run into my mother coming from the laundry room. How did you get here so fast? He asked, alarmed. My mother was thoroughly confused, as she had been doing the laundry and was walking back to the main part of the house. My dad was quite upset about the whole encounter as he retold it. My brother and I relished in the told you so moment. The last time I saw the double was 19. I was 19 and going to community college in the next town over. I had returned home from a late class, putting the hour around midnight. I settled, you know, I settled on the love seat to watch some TV before going to bed. From where I sat, if I looked over my right shoulder, I could look into the kitchen to my parents' bedroom door. I sat watching TV when I heard the familiar click and turn of a knob. It was the same sound I had heard hundreds of times growing up. My mom trying to be as quiet as possible as she exited her bedroom. I looked over. I saw the glare of the TV and the reflection of my mom's glasses. I waved and turned my attention back to the TV. I heard the floor creaking as my mom approached. From the corner of my eye, I could see her standing just outside the light of the television, a few feet away. She just stood there. I turned back to her with a peculiar look. I didn't know why she would be lingering there and not come closer, or at the very least say something. Looking at her, I asked with a laugh, What? The form of my mother stood motionless, wordless. My body went cold as I realized I wasn't speaking to my mom. I turned my head slowly back to the TV, keeping that thing in my peripheral. I turned the volume up. With each click on the volume, the form moved closer to me until it was standing in the threshold of the doorway to the living room. We were within arm's reach of each other. The volume was now at an obnoxious level. I hoped someone would wake up and come and see why the TV was blaring. My eyes were watering as I didn't dare to blink. Why didn't the light from the TV pierce the darkness? It just stared at me. Was it getting closer? Click! My parents' bedroom door. I jumped up and back to face the direction of the sound and to put more distance between myself and that thing, where it should have been standing. It was gone. The glow of the TV filled the kitchen, hitting my mom's sleepy face as she squinted from the light. Fumbling for her glasses, she shushed me and waved her hand for me to turn the TV down. I did so gladly. She looked at me like I was out of my mind for being so loud in the dead of night. I quickly explained that I had seen her double again and wasn't about to be alone with it, or walk past it, hence the television volume. She understood. No more needed to be said. My mother had always believed us. At 19, I asked my mom to stand sentry and make sure I made it to my bedroom safely. Thankfully, that was the last time I saw my mother's doppelganger. I still haven't decided in my mind what it was, but all my summations aren't good. Thinking about the why and what of everything troubles me, so I don't. It's a fun tale to share when people want a thrill of an actual paranormal story. I don't go into great detail. A lot has been lost to time, but mostly I don't want to recall it. Today, when my family and I visit my parents, it's a warm and protected feeling of being home. But there are times when I get up in the middle of the night, I look into the darkness and wonder, will I see it again? Whoa, 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 wee wow. Wow, 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 wee wow. Nicely done, Aisha. That was creepy as fuck. Oh, man. Holy crap, you guys are great. All of you. That was a uh, I feel like normally when I narrate, um what I'm reading doesn't it's like it is definitely hard work because like I am trying to put my emotions into it, but this these stories, every single last one of the stories gave me chills tonight. And that's got to stress the body out. Oh, fuck. Fantastic job, Aisha. Fantastic job, everybody. I'm gonna just read out the list again, just to recap what we went through. First, we started with Marvin Tanner and the girl, and if you don't remember, that was the story about the statue. The statue. There was no statue. Then we have Brianna's wonderful story. Um, of the convent in in Italy. We had Colin Bro. Oh, with the friends, Mill Creek, and the mob beating. We've got Mike Kyle. Oh, with the burning of the house, burning down the house. Ooh, mm. Burning down the house. Woo, hoo, hoo. Sorry. We got Bjorn Peterson with yes, his grandmother and her breathing, but not her breathing. We got Colin Burkhart visiting grandparents. Annual family reunion. Oh yes, the hike in the woods. We've got a Doppelganger by Aisha that we just read. We've got Abe, who did who had the experience of the woman across from him actually being yeah, with the article. And then we have A Haunting by Aisha, and of course Mike Fazio and Oma and Oma's chair. What's that? 10 stories? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stories. 9 authors. Thank you guys so much for your contributions. Those were fantastic. What did you guys think of tonight? Let me ask you: is this something that we should do again? Is this do you like this method? Do you like the typical Justin reads where I just read shit off the internet? Um, what are your thoughts? I would love to hear from you. If you're watching right now, leave comment in the Discord. If you're watching, comment in the Discord. Sounds like Panic at the Disco. Um, if you're not watching it live, obviously leave comments in the group below or in the comment section below. I hope, yeah. So Mike Kyle says, I hope you don't have fucked up dreams. Yeah, like that's gonna happen. I am gonna have fucked up dreams. Such a pleasure watching, says LeChip Beef. Pleasure having you, LeChip. Yeah, Bjorn, who needs sleep? Never gonna get it. This has been great, says Carly. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Mike Kyle. Um, oh, you actually did see. So Mike Kyle says, just the little addendum. If you're just listening right now, Mike Kyle says that his story about the man who invited them to the party was actually like, like he invited them to burn down the house. As they were leaving, Mike saw smoke in the background. So I don't know if that house made it. I'm curious. Do you ever think about going back, Mike? You should go back and see what's. Well, I don't know. I wonder if it's been a while. Okay. All amazing, very fun, fantastic. I'm just reading through the comments. Colin Bro says these stories were all fantastic. Great job, everyone. A round of applause to all of you. This was an amazing stream, said Bjorn. Switch off, says Lechip Beef. Does that mean goodbye? But cheers. And Mike Kyle says, most definitely, please, we'll do this again. I liked it a lot. These were all really good. Would love to do more, although personally flushed out of stories now. Yeah, that's all good. Super creepy guys. Walk away a little more convinced of spook. Yeah, I know. Me too. Me too. I feel more like, yep, paranormal's just a thing. This happened to this many people? Yeah. Yeah. We live in a weird world, man. Live in a weird world. Aisha's really spooked Mike Kyle. Damn, that spider thing. What was it that really got me? Oh, the smiling over the bed. Fuck, that would. Oh, no. So the smiling over the bed for sure of the doppelganger, but also the pushing, that like that feeling of someone pushing under the bed. That is a feeling I know very well because my brother and I used to share bunk beds. And actually, I'm remembering like I would used to stick my feet in between the wooden slats and like poke my brother underneath the mattress. But obviously I was there. I'm not a ghost. Guys, twist. I'm a ghost. Didn't see that happening. I just M. Night Shyamalan all over you. All right. Colin says that. It makes it more believable when someone you know tells it. Yes, it definitely does. When you are, when you know the person, you're like, well, it's not just some crazy dude on TV going like this, you know? Mike says that he couldn't find the house. This was back in the 90s. Yeah. Well, if you couldn't find it, then it's a good chance it might not be there anymore. Go back, record it, endless B roll, then overlay Justin's reading over it. Endless B roll, then overlay. I think my brain is just too spooked to really comprehend what you mean. What are we referring to? Go back, record it, endless B roll, then overlay Justin's reading over it. Feel free to explain. Oh, switch off. Oh, switch off from community written and stuff online. Yeah, I'm down with that. Yeah. That's a bunk bed staple. Yep. Got to do that when you got a bunk bed. All right, everybody. This has been Justin Reads Stuff Community Spooks Edition. I do hope that our community has manage to create some spooks within you with their fine writing skills and stories that actually happened. But also, I would like you, hopefully, to be leaving tonight with maybe new beliefs, or at least being open to new possibilities that the world that we live in isn't always as it seems. My name is Justin Thomas James, and from all of us at the Invictus Stream, I wish you all a spooky night. Good night.